A 72-year-old gentleman once sat across from me in my office, his eyes heavy with worry, but his voice calm. He said, "Doctor, I've been doing things the same way for decades, but something feels different now. Something feels wrong." He wasn't sick, he wasn't on any new medications, and his blood work looked fine. Yet his energy, his circulation, even his ability to feel pleasure was slowly fading. And the surprising culprit wasn't illness, it wasn't diet, it wasn't age itself. It was how he was touching himself. A private habit that seemed harmless on the surface, but over time had been quietly straining his prostate, disrupting his circulation, and dulling the very nerves that once lit him up with passion. I'm Dr. Sophia Jain, a physician who has spent over 30 years helping men navigate the second half of life with strength, confidence, and dignity. And today I want to speak directly to the men over 60 who still believe pleasure and vitality are out of their reach, because I promise you that is not true. What I've learned from thousands of patients is that one small mistake, a mistake made in private by men across the world, can have a devastating impact on blood flow, energy, and performance. And most men don't even know they're making it. In this conversation, I'll walk you through the truth about this mistake, how it damages circulation and sensitivity, and most importantly, how you can correct it to reclaim your vitality no matter your age. Now, let me be clear right from the beginning. There is nothing shameful about self-pleasure. It is one of the most natural acts, and for many men, it has been a source of stress relief, comfort, and connection for decades. But what becomes dangerous is not the act itself, it's how it is done and how the body adapts to patterns that no longer serve you after 60. The body you had at 30 is not the body you have today. Your circulation is more delicate, your prostate is more sensitive, your nervous system requires gentler care. What once felt fine can now chip away at your health, not overnight, but little by little, until one day you wake up and realize something is missing. That's why I'm speaking so openly about it now, because men deserve to know that aging does not have to equal decline. Decline only comes when we fail to adapt. So let's begin with the very first problem I see so often in my practice. It's not about what you watch. It's not about how often you do it. It's about the position most men unknowingly put themselves in, sitting hunched over on the toilet. At first glance, it seems like a private, convenient place. The door is locked, the space feels safe, no one interrupts. But that posture, that long minutes of pressure against the pelvic floor while the body is bent forward, is silently cutting off circulation to the most important area of your body. Blood flow is everything for male vitality. Without it, erections weaken, sensitivity declines, and the prostate becomes irritated. I have seen man after man in their late 60s and 70s develop swelling, dribbling after urination, and aching in the groin, all because they unknowingly conditioned their body into this habit. You may think it's harmless, but the truth is, every time you hunch forward and press your weight into that seat, you are compressing nerves and vessels that are already more fragile with age. And what starts as a small compromise eventually grows into a permanent issue. The solution is simple, but powerful. Change your environment. Stand if you can. Recline comfortably. Give your pelvic floor and your circulation the space to move freely. By removing that pressure, you allow oxygen, nutrients, and blood to reach the very tissues that keep you alive as a man. Never forget, your prostate is silently begging you not to squeeze it. Listen to that call. But posture isn't the only problem. The second mistake men often make is speed. In their 20s or 30s, rushing may have been a necessity, a quick moment before work or before someone came home. That habit gets imprinted, and decades later, many men are still racing toward the finish line as though they're being timed. But after 60, your nervous system no longer thrives under urgency. When you rush, your heart rate jumps, your blood vessels tighten, your muscles brace. You may climax, yes, but you rob your body of the real benefits. The release of oxytocin that calms you, the gentle dopamine that motivates you, the serotonin that stabilizes your mood. Instead of feeling renewed, you feel depleted. Instead of energy, you feel drained. And over the years, this trains your body to expect shallow sensation instead of deep connection. I've had so many men sit in front of me saying, "Doctor, I don't feel as much anymore." And I thought it was just age. But often, it isn't age. It's conditioning. Conditioning the body to see pleasure as a sprint instead of an exploration. So here's what I tell my patients. Slow it down. Breathe. Touch is not a task to complete. It is a dialogue with your body. Every pause, every breath, every change in rhythm retrains your nervous system to be present instead of pressured. You don't need to reach a finish line. You need to remember what it feels like to linger. And then there is the muscle group almost no man thinks about, but every man over 60 must pay attention to if he wants to protect his health. The pelvic floor. This collection of muscles forms the base of your body, supporting the bladder, the prostate, and the organs that allow you to function as a man. When the pelvic floor grows weak, which happens with decades of sitting and never activating it, the problems begin to multiply. Leakage after urination, weaker erections, less satisfying climax, and a subtle loss of control that eats away at confidence. One of my patients, a 70-year-old retired engineer, came to me frustrated that even though he lifted weights and ate clean, he still felt weaker in his most private area. What he didn't realize was that his pelvic floor had grown dormant. Years of ignoring that part of his body had disconnected him from the very muscles that once kept him strong. The good news is, you can reactivate those muscles. The same way you'd squeeze gently to stop a stream of urine, you can contract during arousal to bring circulation and awareness back to the pelvic floor. With practice, the small act rebuilds control, improves sensitivity, and strengthens your ability to hold arousal. It's not complicated. It simply requires attention. And attention is the currency of vitality.
Now let's move into something many men wonder about, but rarely speak openly. Frequency. How often should you touch yourself after 60? Some men worry they're doing it too often, others quietly fear they've gone too long without. The truth is, both extremes can hurt you. I've seen men who use self-pleasure as a daily routine, not out of genuine desire, but out of habit or even boredom. Over time, their energy drops, their prostate grows irritated, and recovery takes longer and longer. They may even notice a dulling of interest in real intimacy because the nervous system has been overtaxed. On the other end, I've met men who've stopped altogether, often due to medication, religious guilt, or simply believing they're too old for it now. What they don't realize is that the male body depends on circulation, and sexual arousal, whether or not it ends in climax, plays a critical role in keeping that blood flow alive. Without it, the tissues lose oxygen, the nerves lose vitality, and desire fades into silence. There is no magic number, but for most men in their 60s and 70s, once or twice a week is often the sweet spot. Not out of obligation, not rushed, but approached with presence and intention. This rhythm nourishes the prostate, refreshes circulation, and stabilizes hormones without draining the system. The key is not counting, it's listening. Your body will tell you when balance is off. You just have to be willing to hear it. But frequency is only part of the story. Another mistake I see far too often is the use of force. As sensitivity naturally changes with age, many men respond by gripping harder, squeezing tighter, or pressing with intensity, hoping to capture the feeling they once had. Unfortunately, this backfires. The nerves of the penis are delicate, and after 60, they are even more vulnerable to trauma. Years of aggressive pressure can cause micro tears, scar tissue, loss of elasticity, even painful curvature that robs you of function. The damage doesn't appear overnight. It builds slowly until one day the difference is impossible to ignore. And by then, healing takes far longer. I remember a man in his late 60s telling me, "Doctor, I feel less now than I ever have," and I thought the solution was to push harder. But in reality, his body was begging him to do the opposite. Force does not restore sensation, it erodes it. The gentler you are, the more your nervous system can reawaken. Think of it like a wound. If you keep scratching, it won't heal. But if you treat it with care, circulation and nerve pathways return. This is the shift I want every man over 60 to understand. Gentleness is not weakness, it is wisdom. And this brings us to the most invisible mistake of all, one that doesn't show up in scans or lab results, but in the quiet ache of loneliness. Masturbating without intention, without emotion, without connection. Over time, many older men begin to treat their bodies like machines. The act becomes mechanical, empty, stripped of meaning. It's done out of routine, not out of feeling. I've had countless men tell me, "It doesn't feel like it used to," or "I don't even know why I bother anymore." The body may still function, but the heart is absent, and that absence drains vitality just as surely as any physical mistake. When touch is stripped of intention, the nervous system adapts to emptiness. Hormones that should elevate your mood and restore your confidence, oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, are released in smaller amounts or not at all. Instead of relief, you're left with flatness. Instead of renewal, you're left with fatigue. And perhaps most damaging of all, this reinforces the idea that pleasure is something you do in silence, in secrecy, without joy. But it doesn't have to be that way. Even solo touch can be meaningful. It can be mindful, affirming, even sacred. It can be a way of thanking your body for carrying you through decades of life. It can be a way of reconnecting, not just with sensation, but with gratitude. So how do you restore that connection? Start by slowing down, breathing deeply, and giving yourself permission to feel rather than to perform. Ask yourself, what does my body want right now? Not, what should I do? How fast should I finish? But what would actually feel nourishing? When you approach self-pleasure with intention, you retrain your nervous system to respond with depth. You're not just keeping your circulation alive, you're keeping your spirit alive. When we pull all of these lessons together, posture, pace, pelvic floor, frequency, pressure, and presence, we see one clear theme. The true danger is disconnection. Not age, not desire, but disconnection. Every mistake older men make, whether it's sitting on the toilet, rushing to finish, neglecting the pelvic floor, doing it too much or not at all, gripping too hard, or going through the motions without meaning, comes down to losing connection with their own body. And connection is the foundation of male vitality. Connection to blood flow, connection to nerves, connection to confidence, and connection to the heart. But here's the good news. It is never too late to reconnect. Your body is still alive, still responsive, still capable of pleasure. Even if it feels quieter now, even if it takes longer, even if you think it's gone, I assure you it's not. It just requires new awareness. Think of your body like a classic car. It doesn't respond to the same rough handling it did in its youth, but with care, with patience, with the right fuel, it can run beautifully for decades more. So I want you to start small. Change the way you sit, change the way you breathe, change the way you think about touch. Let gentleness replace force. Let intention replace routine. Stop measuring performance and start honoring sensation. And most of all, remember that pleasure after 60 is not only possible, it is necessary. It keeps your circulation alive, it keeps your confidence steady, and it keeps your spirit engaged with life itself.
At this point, you might be asking, how do I actually put all this into practice? Knowing the mistakes is one thing, but turning awareness into action is what restores circulation, energy, and pleasure. So let me give you some practical steps you can start using today. Things I've taught my patients that have transformed not just their private lives, but their overall health. The first daily habit I recommend is mindful breathing before any kind of intimacy, even self-intimacy. Most men hold tension in their abdomen and chest without realizing it.
That tension tightens the blood vessels, limits oxygen, and reduces sensitivity. By simply pausing for 60 seconds, breathing deeply into your belly and exhaling slowly, you release that pressure. It may sound small, but it primes your circulation. Think of it as opening the gate before you let the river flow. The second habit is strengthening the pelvic floor, not only during arousal, but throughout the day. When you're standing in line, when you're sitting in a chair, when you're brushing your teeth, practice a gentle squeeze of the muscles you'd use to stop urination. Hold for 3 seconds, release, and repeat. This trains those muscles to wake up again. Over weeks and months, you'll notice stronger control, less leakage, and better support for erections. Remember, these are not just bathroom muscles. They are your foundation. If the foundation is weak, the structure above can't stand tall. Another powerful step is circulation walks. Many men exercise with weights or machines, which is good, but walking has a unique effect on pelvic blood flow. A brisk 20-minute walk increases oxygen to the prostate, reduces inflammation, and reconditions the arteries that feed the penis. For men over 60, walking is not just exercise, it's medicine. I often tell my patients, the fastest way to improve your erections is to improve your steps. The body is a connected system. Move your legs, and you move your blood. But let's also talk about mindset, because without the right mindset, habits rarely stick. Many older men carry decades of silent shame about self-pleasure. Maybe they were told it was wrong as teenagers, maybe their partner disapproved, maybe they simply feel it's childish now. That shame sits in the background, unspoken, but it affects every experience. When you approach your body with guilt, your nervous system shuts down. Hormones like oxytocin never fully release, and arousal feels flat. The truth is, there is nothing shameful about knowing your body. There is nothing shameful about giving it what it needs. When you touch yourself with acceptance instead of guilt, your body responds with gratitude instead of resistance. I once had a patient in his 70s who confessed he felt too old to touch himself anymore. He said it seemed ridiculous, like something he should have grown out of. But after we talked, he agreed to try approaching it differently, with gratitude, with curiosity, with presence. When he came back a month later, his face lit up. He said, "Doctor, I don't just feel better down there, I feel better up here," tapping his head and his heart. That is the power of removing shame. You don't just restore blood flow, you restore dignity. Another essential mindset shift is moving from performance to presence. Too many men approach their bodies like a test. Did I get hard enough? Did I finish fast enough? Did I last long enough? These questions turn intimacy into an exam, and no one relaxes during an exam. Presence is the antidote. Presence says, what do I feel right now? What small sensation can I notice? How does my breathing shift? How does my chest loosen? When you shift into presence, the body opens. Erections become easier, recovery feels faster, and satisfaction deepens because you're no longer chasing a grade, you're enjoying an experience. Now, let's talk diet, because circulation doesn't just depend on what you do privately, it depends on what you feed your arteries every single day. After 60, the biggest enemy of erections is stiffness in the arteries. If your arteries can't expand, blood can't flow, and no technique will overcome that. That's why foods that support vascular health are essential. Leafy greens like spinach and kale provide nitrates that naturally open blood vessels. Berries supply antioxidants that protect delicate nerves. Nuts and seeds give you healthy fats that keep hormones balanced. On the other hand, processed sugar, heavy fried foods, and excess alcohol constrict vessels and inflame the prostate. I'm not asking you to eat like a saint, but every choice either feeds circulation or steals it. When you eat in a way that supports your heart, you also support your erections, your energy, and your confidence. And speaking of the heart, let's talk about stress. Chronic stress is one of the silent killers of circulation. When you carry stress, your body floods with cortisol and adrenaline, chemicals that constrict blood vessels and lower testosterone. Many older men tell me they feel exhausted, and they assume it's just aging, but often it's stress eating away at them day by day. One of the most powerful things you can do is release stress before you enter intimacy. Whether it's through meditation, light stretching, prayer, or even simple laughter, anything that lowers stress will raise circulation. You cannot separate the mind from the body. A calm mind leads to an open body, and an open body leads to a satisfying experience. So, if we pull all of these steps together, breathing, pelvic floor activation, walking, removing shame, shifting mindset, eating for circulation, and releasing stress, you can see a bigger picture forming. The mistake isn't just one action, it's disconnection. And the solution isn't one quick trick, it's reconnection. Reconnection to breath, to muscle, to food, to mindset, to presence. Every choice is an opportunity either to restrict or to restore. And at 60, 70, even 80, the body is still capable of remarkable restoration if you give it the right conditions. The men who thrive after 60 are not the ones who do what they always did, but the ones who adapt. They learn new ways to connect. They treat their body like a partner instead of a machine. They honor their needs instead of ignoring them. And the reward is not just stronger circulation, it's a renewed sense of life. They feel more confident at the dinner table, more energetic on a walk, more affectionate with their spouse, more alive in every way. Because when a man feels connected in his most private self, he feels connected everywhere.
Now let's turn to something men rarely talk about, but that makes all the difference: sensitivity. Over the years, many men lose sensitivity in the nerves that control pleasure. Sometimes it's because of diabetes, sometimes because of circulation issues, sometimes simply from decades of friction without enough recovery. When those nerves go quiet, the body struggles to respond. You might get partial erections but not feel the same intensity, or you might find stimulation less satisfying than before. The good news is, nerves can be reawakened. Just as muscles strengthen with exercise, nerves grow more responsive with practice. One of the first techniques I teach is slow stimulation. Instead of rushing, instead of pushing hard, try the opposite. Use a light touch, breathe deeply, and focus on small changes in sensation. At first, it may feel strange, even frustrating, but over time, those delicate nerves begin firing again. Think of it like tuning an old radio. You turn the dial gently until the signal comes back. This teaches your nervous system to notice subtle pleasure again, and once those signals grow stronger, erections often follow naturally. Another important technique is alternating temperature. Warmth brings blood flow. Coolness wakes up the nerves. Some of my patients keep a warm compress and a cool cloth nearby, alternating them along the inner thighs and lower abdomen before intimacy. The shift in temperature signals the nerves, increases circulation, and primes the body for arousal. It's simple, it costs nothing, and it trains your nervous system to respond with more vigor. Massage is another overlooked tool. I don't just mean massage of the obvious areas. I mean massaging the lower back, the hips, the inner thighs, even the feet. All of these regions are wired into the same network that controls erections. By improving blood flow and nerve activity in those surrounding areas, you create a stronger response where it matters most. I often recommend men take a few minutes each night to massage their own lower abdomen in gentle circles. It not only improves circulation, but also calms the nervous system, which helps erections last longer. And then there's the role of touch with a partner. Many couples over 60 slip into routine. Same moves, same timing, same patterns. The body stops paying attention when there's nothing new. Novelty doesn't have to mean anything extreme. It can be as simple as changing the pace, changing the environment, or focusing on areas that were overlooked before. When the mind feels novelty, the body responds with energy. This is why couples who stay playful often maintain stronger intimacy well into their later years.
But restoring sensitivity also requires patience. One of the biggest mistakes I see is men expecting instant results. They try a new method once, don't notice a dramatic difference, and give up. Nerves don't work that way. They need repetition, consistency, and encouragement. Think about when you learn a new skill, playing an instrument, lifting weights, even learning a language. The first day feels awkward, but with practice, progress happens. Your nervous system is no different. Commit to a few weeks, not just a few tries, and you'll be surprised how much can change. Now let's talk about confidence, because circulation and nerves are only half the equation. Confidence is what allows men to actually enjoy the benefits of those improvements. Too many men live in fear. Fear of not performing, fear of letting their partner down, fear of what their body might not do. That fear itself becomes the biggest block. When you enter intimacy already anxious, your nervous system shifts into fight or flight, and blood flow leaves the pelvis. The very thing you worry about becomes more likely. So, how do we rebuild confidence? First, by setting realistic expectations. Erections at 60 are not the same as at 20, and that is not a failure. It is simply biology. The goal is not to rewind the clock. The goal is to enjoy intimacy that fits who you are now. When you release the impossible standard of youth, you free yourself to appreciate the strength, wisdom, and connection of the present moment. Many of my patients tell me that sex after 60, while different, is actually richer, slower, more meaningful, and more satisfying once they stop comparing themselves to their 20-year-old self. The second key to confidence is communication. Silence creates fear, but honesty creates trust. If you tell your partner what feels good, what doesn't, what you need, you remove the guesswork. You also invite them into the journey of restoration, which strengthens the bond between you. I've seen couples transform not because their physical function changed overnight, but because their emotional connection grew stronger. And that emotional connection itself improves physical response because arousal begins in the brain long before it shows in the body. Finally, confidence grows through small wins. Celebrate progress, not perfection. If you notice stronger morning erections, even once a week, that's progress. If you feel more sensation after practicing breathing or massage, that's progress. If your partner smiles because you shared openly, that's progress. Every small win builds momentum, and momentum creates confidence. Over time, those wins add up, and suddenly what felt impossible a few months ago feels natural again. So when we put it all together, restoring nerve sensitivity through slow touch, temperature shifts, massage, novelty, patience, and then layering confidence with realistic expectations, honest communication, and celebrating progress, you begin to see a complete picture. This is not just about avoiding one mistake. This is about building a lifestyle of connection, circulation, sensitivity, and confidence. And the truth is, no man is too old to begin. I've worked with men in their 80s who regained pleasure and intimacy by following these principles. The body never loses its ability to respond. It only needs the right care.
So as we close this discussion, I want to remind you of something important. Restoring performance after 60 is not just about blood flow, not just about diet, not just about nerves, and not just about mindset. It's about the whole picture. Your body, your emotions, your lifestyle, your relationships, they all come together to shape how you function as a man. Too often we look for a single magic pill or one quick trick, when in reality, strength returns through daily choices, repeated over time. Let's go back over the key lessons. The mistake so many men make after 60 is pushing their body without respecting recovery. They think more stimulation will solve the problem, when in fact, it depletes circulation and dulls sensitivity. The correction is simple. Shift the balance. Build recovery into your habits. Use foods like leafy greens, berries, nuts, fish, and citrus to keep your arteries clear. Support your hormones with adequate protein, zinc, vitamin D, and magnesium. Add movement every single day, even if it's walking or light stretching, to keep blood flowing where it matters. Next, remember the power of castor oil and baking soda compresses. These are not gimmicks. They're old tools with modern relevance. They reduce inflammation, soften tissue, and improve circulation. They can be the difference between partial blood flow and full engorgement. Just 10 minutes a few times a week can help undo years of stagnation. Combine that with apple cider vinegar in your diet, and you've got a triple approach: internal cleansing, external stimulation, and hormonal support. Then, we added the nervous system back into the conversation. Sensitivity matters just as much as circulation. By using slow touch, temperature variation, massage, and novelty, you train your nerves to fire again. And once nerves wake up, pleasure increases, which in turn boosts arousal and makes erections stronger. This is why patience is key. No man can expect changes overnight, but with steady practice, the body adapts. We also looked at confidence, the mental side of male performance. Without confidence, even the healthiest man can struggle. By setting realistic expectations, being open with your partner, and celebrating small wins, you create a foundation that supports everything else. When fear decreases, blood flow increases. When shame decreases, sensitivity increases. Confidence is not about being perfect, it's about being present. Now, let me share something personal from my medical practice. I once had a patient in his mid-70s who came to me convinced his intimate life was finished. He had tried pills, pumps, supplements, you name it, but nothing seemed to stick. What changed his story was not a new medication, but a new mindset. We focused on nutrition, daily walking, castor oil packs, and open conversations with his wife. Within 6 months, not only had his morning erections returned, but his marriage felt renewed. He told me, "Dr. Jain, I thought I was too old for this, but I was wrong. My body just needed the right care." That's what I want every man listening to remember. You are not too old. Another story comes from a gentleman in his early 60s. He was still working, still active, but he felt his energy fading. He admitted that he often watched adult films late at night as a habit, not realizing how much it drained his nervous system. Once he reduced that habit, added more sleep, and focused on real intimacy with his partner, his erections became stronger than they had been in years. His words were, "I didn't need a prescription, I needed discipline." That simple shift made all the difference. So, here's my final advice to you. Choose consistency over intensity. Don't wait for a perfect day or a perfect product. Start small. Start today. Drink more water, eat more vegetables, walk after dinner, try the compresses, breathe slowly, reduce late-night habits that drain your system. Each of these steps may seem small, but together they form a powerful system that restores circulation, revives nerves, balances hormones, and builds confidence. And if you are partnered, invite them into this journey. Intimacy is not a solo sport. When couples approach these changes together, success is much higher. Talk openly, laugh together, experiment with new forms of touch, and celebrate the progress along the way. If you are single, this work still matters. It keeps your body strong, your confidence high, and prepares you for future connections. At the end of the day, male vitality is not about age. It's about choices. Yes, aging changes the body, but it does not erase your ability to experience pleasure, intimacy, and strength. With the right tools, circulation support, nerve training, hormonal balance, and confidence, you can continue living with energy and connection well into your 70s, 80s, and beyond. So my challenge to you is this. For the next 30 days, commit to at least 3 of the methods we've discussed. Maybe it's daily walking, castor oil compresses twice a week, and adding leafy greens to your plate. Maybe it's reducing stress with deep breathing, massaging your lower abdomen each night, and communicating more openly with your partner. Whatever it is, choose 3 and do them consistently. In 1 month, you will notice a difference. In 3 months, you will feel transformed. This is Dr. Sophia Jain reminding you that no man is ever too old to reclaim his vitality. Your body is wiser than you think, stronger than you believe, and more capable than you imagine. With patience, consistency, and care, you can restore not just performance, but joy, intimacy, and confidence. That's the real gift of this stage of life.